Good evening and welcome to a very special episode of Left, Right and Centre. Tonight we dive into a story of innovation, resilience and strategic brilliance from India's defence sector. The Zorawar light tank, a marvel of indigenous engineering, has taken centre stage as India bolsters our military might in the face of growing regional challenges. This isn't just a tank, it's a symbol of our determination to secure our borders and achieve self-reliance in defence. Shiv and I had world-class access to the Zorawar, the first journalist to fully check out the tank. Let's explore in this special program why the Zorawar was developed, its cutting-edge features, and what it means for the future of our army. This is the Zorawar, India's very own light tank. Built for a very specific requirement, to defend our forces and attack when necessary in high-altitude areas. Conceived of in the post-Galwan context and in direct response to the emergence of the Chinese Type 15 light tank, the Zorawar is meant to plug holes in India's armoured defences. At the moment, India uses heavy tanks, the T-90 and T-72, way up in the Ladakh heights. These are far too heavy and unwieldy for operations in the rarefied atmosphere. And so Zorawar was designed and developed in 21 months straight. Weighing in at 25 tons, close to half the weight of the older tanks, the Zorawar can be easily airlifted and is built with the future in mind. Upgradability. Designed to operate with drones, it will also feature an active protection system, a system which intercepts incoming missiles and rockets to protect the tank. But these upgrades will come later. At the moment, the Army appears committed to the tank, which is being trialled not just in high-altitude areas, but also the desert. The Zorawar weighs 25 tons. It has a power-to-weight ratio of 30 horsepower per ton. That's key in the mountains. It has a 1,000 horsepower engine. It's amphibious. It can ford rivers and lakes. It can fire missiles, has a 105mm main gun, a 12.7mm remote-controlled weapon station, and a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. In trials in September last year at the Mahajan firing range near Bikaner, the Zorawar hit its targets with pinpoint accuracy, using its Belgian-designed gun, proving its lethality. Zorawar's development is a triumph of collaboration and indigenization. Led by the Defence Research and Development Organisation and Larsen & Toubro, with contributions from micro, small and medium enterprises, the tank boasts over 70% indigenous content. From its hull to advanced systems, Indian industries have risen to the challenge, reducing reliance on foreign technology. Unlike the Arjun main battle tank, which faced delays and cost overruns because of an overemphasis on full indigenization, the Zorawar takes a pragmatic approach, incorporating foreign components like the Cummins engine and the Cockerell gun turret while pushing for local manufacturing. The Army may eventually end up operating 700 Zorawar tanks. With Shiv Vishnu for NDTV.
Well, we're on an incredible piece of Indian engineering. Shiv and I are absolutely privileged to be here with Larsen & Toubro in Hazira near Surat. This is a tank. It's called the Zorawar. It takes the battle to the Chinese in altitudes upwards of 15,000 feet.
You know, Vishnu, it's actually incredible that for a country that has fought so many wars in the mountains and at high altitude, a country didn't know until it had another war on its hands that it needed a tank like the Zorawar.
No, you're
and that's
quite
the kind of tank we're sitting on.
You're absolutely right. Now, India does have a history of light tanks.
Yeah.
We've had the Sherman tank, pushed up the Zojila Pass in 1948. We've had the AMX light tank. We've had the PT-76, but they weren't Indian.
Yeah.
This is an Indian tank for a new modern Indian requirement, and it stands out as the best tank of its class, possibly in the world.
There are tanks like the T-15, which the Chinese deployed in Ladakh during the standoff. There is the Sprut, which is a Russian tank, which the Russians have been offering us, hoping that India will buy it along with all the other Russian weapons. But the Indian Army and the Indian government took a decision that this was a requirement that needed to be met here in India. And that's the reason why, we use the phrase mission mode, Vishnu, which is building a weapon system like the Zorawar in response to a live threat or a live combat situation, which is what Eastern Ladakh really is. And that's the reason why Vishnu and I sitting here on the Zorawar means so much, Vishnu. This is the actual tank that was there in the mountains.
And this was a tank which was designed and developed and prototyped and rolled out in 21 months. This has already done trials quite successfully by LNG, not yet user trials, up in Ladakh, out in the desert as well. They are fixing it to make it even better, and very soon it's going to be handed over to the Indian Army to put it through some incredibly rigorous trials, because acquisition of these tanks in very large numbers takes place only once that's done.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about why mountain tanks are necessary, Vishnu. In places like Ladakh, where you've got very steep slopes, access is difficult. The closest a tank can get to a roadhead can be many hundreds of meters because of snow, etc. How does a tank like this really help? And what is it like fighting in those altitudes?
A tank like this is crucial and is better in many senses than the existing tank we have, because it's got a very high power to weight ratio and it's light. It weighs approximately 25 tons. The main battle tanks of the class of the T-90 are more than twice the weight of this tank. And in the rarefied atmosphere of Ladakh, in temperatures which go down to minus 30, minus 35, you need a light tank with a very high power to weight ratio to be able to operate. Forget about the gun for a moment, forget about the systems. If you don't have mobility, then you're nothing. And this tank is much more mobile at those altitudes than what we operate with.
So you've got a main gun, you've got this weapon over here, you've got missiles housed in that canister over there. So this is a hugely armed light tank. It's not just built for mobility, it's built to really deliver a punch and really deliver hurt to any adversary that comes anywhere within range of it. It has an incredible suite of electronics, targeting systems. There's crew comfort that's been built into the Zorawar. And Vishnu, one of the interesting things we've learned while we were here at Hazira is that, for a country that imports so much of its military hardware, every effort is being made, even though there are many systems on this that are foreign, for all of those systems to be built eventually here in
You're
India.
quite right. Just the gun itself, the John Cockerell gun, it's a Belgian design, it's a Belgian company. But if there are orders for this gun, then they would possibly set shop here in India. And remember, Larsen & Toubro is already exporting a lot of their weapon systems outside to friendly neighborhood nations, perhaps nations outside the immediate neighborhood as well. This has immense possibilities, not just in terms of exports, but also in terms of evolving as a piece of technology. This can possibly be made into an unmanned platform in the future. It can work with drones. It's designed to have systems in the future which actually take out enemy drones. It might have an APS or an active protection system to intercept incoming kinetic shells. That's not going to happen immediately, but it has to happen down the road for this to keep up with contemporary threats.
Vishnu, let's talk a little bit about the protection systems on this drone. You were in Ukraine. You have, with your own eyes, seen how tank warfare has completely changed. You were literally there in the field. Tell us about how the Zorawar, with its armor, with its protection systems, with its situational awareness, sort of re-emphasizes tanks are not going anywhere. You know, you might have drones, tanks may be vulnerable, but you still need a Zorawar.
You need a Zorawar, but you need a Zorawar kitted out with electronic jamming systems, with an active protection system, with a drone of its own to loiter and give reconnaissance as well, and to operate in a formation of tanks which are protected perhaps even with integral air defense. So the tank comes under a large number of new threats, particularly from the air. And that is where tanks like the Zorawar need to evolve. And we've learned that and we've seen that up there in Ukraine. And this needs to go into place in the mountains of Ladakh as well, because the Chinese are massive operators of all types of drones.
It's incredible. To think that Vishnu and I are actually riding in the very same Zorawar. This particular prototype was in Ladakh, was in the hills, was in the deserts. It's soon going to be in the hands of the Indian Army for final user trials before it enters operational service, which means that this is a fighting vehicle that is ready to be in the customer's hands. And I think that's really important because, like Vishnu said, it's taken 21 months to get this from scratch to being absolutely fight-worthy. So this is the Zorawar, and Vishnu and I are wishing it the very best as it heads into service.
In a major national security news break, the Modi government has unveiled India's biggest defense upgrade plan since independence. The Defense Ministry has unveiled a 15-year, multi-billion-dollar plan to transform India's armed forces. The roadmap, a copy of which is with NDTV, includes nuclear-powered warships, next-generation battle tanks, hypersonic missiles, stealth bomber drones, AI-powered weapons, and space-age warfare tech. According to this path-breaking short-term capability vision document, the Army will induct nearly 1,800 future tanks to replace the T-72 fleet, 400 light tanks for mountain warfare, 50,000 tank-mounted anti-tank guided missiles, over 700 robotic counter IED systems, improvised explosive device systems. The Navy will get a new aircraft carrier, 10 next-generation frigates, 7 advanced corvettes, and 4 landing dock platforms. Nuclear propulsion for warships has been greenlit, that's huge, as well as electromagnetic aircraft launch systems. The Air Force will acquire 75 high-altitude pseudo-satellites, 150 stealth bomber drones, hundreds of precision-guided munitions, over 100 remotely piloted aircraft. Now, this is a blueprint for a future-ready force, emphasizing artificial intelligence, autonomy, and space warfare, India's answer to 21st century threats. Joining us now for his views to this, Air Marshal R.G.K. Kapoor. Air Marshal, thanks very much for being with us. It's come late, but there seems to be a system which is now waking up to the fact that a lot of what they have identified in this 15-year window is technology being developed actively or has already been deployed elsewhere in the world. Therefore, as a 15-year plan, how important is this?
I think it's a great plan. It's very important. I think we should look at it in the context of the technology perspective and roadmap which Headquarter IDS has been publishing. The first one was published in 2013 and the second one in 2018. Before the latest one, which was released during exercise Ran Samvad in Mao, with the defense minister being present there. And so if we see, all these are 15-year roadmaps. But the frequency which we see is from 2013 to 18. It's taken 5 years to revise the roadmap. And from 2018 to 25, it's taken 7 years to revise the roadmap. It just highlights the importance of the technological evolution. The rate at which the technology is changing and the kind of systems that our industry and our scientists are able to produce is a reflection on why it changes so fast.
Yeah.
But I think this document, which has been released by MOD, is derived from the technology perspective and roadmap of 2025. When I went through the both, I realized that everything is common. It's just the same thing. It is perhaps not the complete reproduction of the document, but I think it has touched the important areas And
Sure.
what it also highlights is that it's a reflection of, changing character of war, how technological evolution is affecting warfare, and the innovations that are taking place in recent conflicts. So it has an imprint of everything. And I would also say that, the recent Chinese military day parade, though the document was written earlier, you see so many commonalities. So it is just a reflection of where the world is going in warfare and war fighting.
No, but Air Marshal, we have to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and we have to develop presumably most of these systems in a finite period of time. When I look at a document like this, the first thing that comes to my mind as being a cynic of Indian arms acquisition over a period of 30 years is that this is nothing more than a dream.
Yes, to some extent, but not to the entire extent. Why I say so, I think there is little optimism, while there is guarded, I wouldn't say pessimism, but concern in the way we have been developing our systems and the way we have been producing. And so it is the timeline from the development to production to operationalization which has been the biggest concern for the armed forces, and the budget. Our budget is less than 2% of our GDP. China's budget is 7.2% of its GDP. And yet it is 1/3 of the US budget. And so if we want all of this, and mind you, Vishnu, it does not take into consideration AMCA, LCA Mark II, various other programs which are already there, and Sudarshan Chakra, so to say, ballistic missile defense, which are really expensive.
So
plans.
this
So
would mean
if we
us
don't put-
having to increase our defense budget as a percentage of our GDP to well above 7-8%. I mean, that just seems difficult to fathom that they would actually do that. Number one. Number two, sir, in as much as this is great, a lot of these technologies have to be made in India, built in India. This is all very much at a prototype stage, if that. That being the case, to translate this dream into a manufacturing reality is another battle.
It is certainly going to be a major battle. But I think if we prioritize in relation to what conflicts have taught us, especially also if we see in context of Op Sindoor, there are certain advantages and there are certain challenges. If we identify the challenges correctly and we focus on them and probably give them to specific industries, then I think it is doable. May not be everything, but in my opinion, I think if we do space, cyber, electronic warfare, and ISR, followed by parallelly the weapons should go. I think we should be able to make good a lot of it. There are a lot of people in India who are wanting to do many things, but it is certain amount of push that the government and the Ministry of Defense have to give to the private industry, incentivize. Only then will it work. Otherwise, we will keep chasing a dream.
Let's just go through some of the technologies, and there's a lot over here. But scramjet propulsion for hypersonic missiles. What we've seen in the recent conflict between Iran and Israel is the limited use of hypersonic weapons. That's actually changed the nature of the threat that India also potentially faces, both from Pakistan and China. We have the technology now in prototype infancy. We've been testing our hypersonic technologies. That has to be weaponized and really fast, right?
So if we see, there are two kinds of hypersonic missiles or weapons. One is the glide vehicle and the other is powered by a scramjet or a hypersonic cruise missile. Hypersonic glide vehicle would be much easier to get, primarily because we have already tested it, and it requires a ballistic missile to propel it into into space and then get it. So I think that would be a lower hanging fruit which is achievable. Scramjet, we have already done a 1,000-second trial. And so if we go into a mission mode, we should be able to do it in about 5 to 7 years. So these are both possible because the body of the HSTDV has already been tested onto various types of, it's gone through the wind tunnel testing and other testing. And so there is a fair amount of maturity that can come. And so it is possible. The only country which has actually used hypersonic weapons in the conflicts, recent conflicts, has been Russia. Even Iran, I would not call them classical hypersonic weapons because they used a very, very high trajectory. So the terminal velocity was high, but it was not at hypersonic velocities when it struck.
Sure.
And so to say that they are hypersonic weapons, I would say we need to take it with a pinch of salt.
Okay. There's been mention of persistent surveillance for the Indian Armed Forces. It finds mention over here, high altitude pseudo satellites. In other words, essentially, I call them hanging planes. They rely on solar energy. They travel very slowly, but they're up there possibly for even weeks, if not longer. How is that critical as a relatively low-cost solution to satellites and other sensors?
So satellites have a very, very limited lifetime, especially when you put them in the low Earth orbits. Their lifetime reduces to about 5 to 7 years. Plus, they are limited by the fuel that they carry for orbital sustenance and stabilization. And so HAPS offers you persistent surveillance and communication capability. So there are two aspects to it. And when we do this, it's not a simple technology. Not many countries in the world are using HAPS at this point in time for ISR. Most countries are relying on satellites. We are going the HAPS way. And to have a solar-powered HAPS is even a bigger challenge, because to generate that kind of power, to power all your systems, payloads, and keep the aircraft or the airship aloft is a major challenge. And I think it's going to take at least 3 to 5 years, 2 to 3 years at least, for this technology to mature anywhere close to it. The advantage it offers is that it persistently remains within your own airspace and provides you a lot of look-in capability.
Sure.
And plus, it remains outside the envelope of most of the surface-to-air weapons.
Well, that's something that's changing fast. But thanks, sir, very much for your thoughts on this. If indeed this does come through, it'll be a revolution for India's armed forces and in terms of our capabilities. It does come in the face of very significant threats in the region. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us. We're running out of time on Left, Right and Centre. From all of us here, good night.